A Japanese billionaire laughed when he said, "Solve my puzzle and $500 million is yours." But when a black maid from Oklahoma sent in her answer, the entire world went silent. They say every story starts with a choice, but this one started with a challenge. When billionaire tech mogul Kenji Morimoto stood on stage in downtown Tokyo, surrounded by flashing cameras and reporters shouting questions, nobody really paid attention to what he said at first. The man was known for his theatrics: robotic dancers, holograms, outrageous statements that made headlines for a week and then vanished. But that day, he said something no one expected. "Solve it, and $500 million is yours." The crowd laughed. Some even clapped. They thought he was joking, just another publicity stunt to promote his company's new artificial intelligence system. But Kenji wasn't smiling. He placed a sheet of paper on the podium, covered in strange symbols and patterns. To most people, it looked like nonsense, a chaotic mix of numbers, kanji, and geometric shapes. "Every great mind will fail," he said, his voice calm, almost arrogant. "This puzzle cannot be solved by logic alone. It demands understanding." The internet exploded that night. News outlets ran with headlines like "Japanese billionaire offers $500 million for impossible puzzle" and "Morimoto's madness, genius or marketing trick." Forums lit up, mathematicians and programmers tearing into the code, debating whether it was even real. Thousands of people tried, none came close. But halfway across the Pacific, in a small suburban town just outside Tulsa, Oklahoma, a woman named Marissa Cole would hear about it while scrubbing the floor of a guest bathroom. Her radio was old, the sound a bit static, but she caught enough to make her pause. $500 million, she whispered to herself, leaning on the mop handle. That's crazy. For a second, she laughed, a soft, tired laugh. She had no business thinking about things like that. She cleaned houses for a living. People like her didn't solve billionaire riddles. But there was something about that voice clip they played on the radio. The arrogance in Kenji's tone. It stuck with her, almost like a dare. And maybe that's where it really started. Not on that Tokyo stage, but in that quiet house in Oklahoma, where a maid with tired hands and a sharp mind felt something stir. Curiosity. The kind that doesn't go away easily. But what she didn't know was that her name would soon be on every news channel in the world. Marissa Cole wasn't born lucky, but she was born curious. At 34, her life looked nothing like the one she'd imagined back in college. Once, she'd sat in a lecture hall at Ohio State University, solving equations faster than her classmates, dreaming of designing machines that could change lives. But that dream ended the year her father got sick. Tuition bills piled up, and life demanded choices she wasn't ready to make. She left school, came home, and started cleaning houses. One house turned into three turned into six. Before long, she had her own small cleaning business, driving around in a fading blue minivan with a cracked windshield and a stack of air fresheners swinging from the rearview mirror. Her clients liked her. She was quiet, respectful, never snooped, but sharp. The kind of woman who noticed when a lamp was off by 2 inches or when a painting hung slightly crooked. She didn't say much, but she saw everything. Her favorite house to clean was a massive property on the edge of town owned by a retired Japanese businessman who'd recently moved to Oklahoma to be closer to his son. The house had marble floors, tall windows, and shelves filled with books in both English and Japanese. Marissa didn't understand most of the titles, but sometimes she'd pause while dusting to sound them out. She liked the way the foreign words felt on her tongue. Careful, deliberate. Every evening, when she got home to her small one-bedroom apartment, she'd make tea and open her old laptop. It was slow, missing 2 keys, and the battery barely lasted an hour, but it worked. She'd spend time solving logic puzzles online, not for money, just for the thrill of figuring something out. Patterns made sense to her. They were order in a world that rarely offered any. Her friends teased her for it. "Girl, you clean 12 hours a day and still want to stare at numbers?" Her neighbor Tasha would laugh. Marissa would just shrug. "Numbers don't lie," she'd say. "People do." Tasha would roll her eyes. "Yeah, well, numbers don't pay rent either." They'd laugh, but Marissa knew deep down that her mind still itched for more. Like there was a part of her that refused to give up on who she used to be. But sometimes, life has a strange way of remembering you, even when you've stopped remembering yourself. Kenji Morimoto didn't grow up rich. He built his empire with bare hands, sharp instincts, and an ego large enough to fill the boardroom of Moritech Robotics, the Tokyo-based company that made him one of the most powerful men in Asia. To his investors, Kenji was a genius, a man ahead of his time. To his critics, he was a narcissist who believed the world revolved around his ideas. Both were right. He'd spent years chasing perfection, pushing his engineers to design machines that could think, not just follow commands, but interpret, reason, even improvise. When he launched Project Izanami, a neural AI meant to mimic human intuition, he believed he'd finally reached that frontier. But something went wrong. The AI produced results even his own team couldn't explain. Patterns appeared where none should exist, formulas that defied mathematical rules. So in one of his most bizarre press conferences, Kenji turned the glitch into a spectacle. He claimed the AI had generated a riddle, one so advanced that only a mind capable of true understanding could solve it. Then he made his announcement. Solve it and $500 million is yours. It was madness, but profitable madness. Stocks spiked. Traffic on the company's site hit record numbers. Universities and private think tanks started competing, desperate to prove their brilliance. Kenji enjoyed the chaos. He'd watch videos of professors debating, laughing to himself over a glass of sake. In his mind, this was art, the world dancing to his rhythm. But privately, Kenji was lonely. His empire was filled with people who feared him, not respected him. His assistants came and went, no one lasting long under his impossible standards. Even his own family had distanced themselves, tired of living under his shadow. One night, his assistant Naoko Sato entered his office. "Sir, do you think anyone can really solve it?" she asked carefully. Kenji smirked, not looking up from his desk. "If they could, I'd be the first to know. But don't worry. Humanity still has a long way to go." Naoko hesitated. "And if they do?" He looked up, eyes sharp. "Then I'll meet them myself." He didn't mean it as a promise, more as a joke. But fate has a habit of listening when arrogance speaks too loudly. And across the ocean, someone was already holding the key he thought no one could ever find. The world didn't sleep for days after Kenji's announcement. You couldn't scroll online without seeing it. The strange puzzle plastered across every social platform. Reddit threads turned into battlegrounds. YouTube channels popped up overnight, each promising the real solution. Some claimed it was fake, others swore they were seconds away from cracking it. Mathematicians in Stanford live-streamed their attempts. A physics professor from MIT went viral when he screamed on camera after realizing one of the formulas looped back on itself, endlessly. Even an 11-year-old kid in Dallas claimed he had figured out half of it. And yet, no one could get close. TV hosts joked about it. News anchors speculated about Kenji's motives. Was it marketing? Was it art? Was it some kind of social experiment? Everyone had an opinion. Meanwhile, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Marissa only heard about it in passing. A client's teenage son was watching a YouTube breakdown while she was dusting the living room. She paused for a moment, eyes drawn to the screen. The puzzle was there, a square divided into sections, with Japanese kanji in one corner, Roman numerals in another, and a sequence of numbers that looked oddly familiar. "Looks like a mess to me," the boy laughed. "They say it's impossible." Marissa smiled faintly. "Everything's impossible till someone figures it out." He shrugged. "You think you could?" She didn't answer, just kept dusting, but her mind stayed on that image long after she left the house. That night, over leftover rice and tea, she pulled up the puzzle on her old laptop. The webpage took nearly 2 minutes to load, but when it finally did, she stared at it like she was meeting an old friend. Something about it made sense. Not the symbols themselves, but the pattern underneath. She reached for a notebook and started scribbling. Lines, shapes, ratios. She couldn't explain why, but the logic felt familiar. It reminded her of something she'd studied years ago, an algorithm used in mechanical learning. Hours slipped by without her noticing. The tea went cold. Her pencil broke twice, but for the first time in years, she felt alive. But puzzles have a strange way of revealing more than answers. Sometimes, they expose the person solving them. By the third night, Marissa couldn't think about anything else. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the puzzle's strange lines rearranging themselves behind her eyelids, like it was alive, teasing her to come back. She worked during the day as usual. Same houses, same rooms, same silence. But something had changed. She'd find herself pausing mid-task, lost in thought, muttering equations under her breath. At one house, an older client, Mrs. Peterson, noticed her distraction. "You okay, dear? You've wiped that counter 4 times already." Marissa blinked. "Oh, sorry, ma'am." "Just thinking," Mrs. Peterson smiled kindly. "Thinking about what?" Marissa hesitated, embarrassed. "That puzzle, the one that billionaire guy made." Mrs. Peterson laughed. "Oh, that nonsense. My grandson's been glued to his phone trying to solve it. Said if he wins, he'll buy me a yacht." Marissa smiled, polite, but her mind was elsewhere. Later that night, she sat at her small kitchen table again. The notebook was already full of scribbles and arrows, connecting ideas that probably made no sense to anyone but her. The lamp buzzed faintly, and the sound of distant traffic from the street outside drifted through the cracked window. She stared at one of the symbols. A spiral. At first glance, it seemed random, but then she remembered a lecture from years ago about the Fibonacci sequence and natural symmetry in engineering design. She flipped to a fresh page and began matching each Japanese character to a number based on its stroke count. Slowly, the chaos started to take shape. Her phone buzzed. A message from Tasha. "You still working on that thing? Girl, you're obsessed." Marissa typed back. "Just a little longer." "I think I see something," Tasha replied with a laughing emoji and went silent. Marissa leaned forward, heart pounding. Each time she drew a line, more pieces connected. The puzzle wasn't random at all. It was a pattern of balance and reflection, like 2 mirrors facing each other. The kind of structure only someone who understood both logic and emotion could see. And suddenly, it clicked. The key wasn't math, it was empathy. The riddle wasn't asking what the answer was. It was asking who could understand it. She sat back, stunned, whispering to herself, "Oh my God, it's not about solving it. It's about seeing it." But she didn't know that by morning, that realization would set off a chain reaction that would change her life forever. By the next evening, Marissa's apartment looked like the inside of a detective's office. Pages covered the table, the counter, even the floor, filled with notes, arrows, sketches, and lines connecting one pattern to another. She hadn't eaten much, barely slept, but her eyes burned with that rare kind of focus that happens only when your mind knows you're close to something big. Outside, rain tapped lightly against the window, the kind of steady sound that makes time feel slower. She didn't even notice when the power flickered for a moment. Her entire world had shrunk down to a single sheet of paper. At exactly 11:42 p.m., she circled a cluster of numbers near the corner of the puzzle. To anyone else, they'd look random. 3, 5, 8, 13, 21. But to her, it was the Fibonacci sequence again. She whispered, "It's repeating. It's talking to itself." She ran her fingers through her hair, grabbed her old calculator, and started punching in numbers. The results formed coordinates, but not of a place, a pass. They pointed to a word. When she wrote it down, her breath caught. The word was heart. Her eyes widened. She flipped through her notes, scanning for anything that could confirm it. The puzzle's final phrase, the Japanese kanji near the bottom, suddenly made sense. It translated to, "The center is the answer. Heart, center, connection, understanding." Her hands trembled. "That's it," she whispered. "That's the answer." Still, part of her didn't believe it. This was Kenji Morimoto's challenge, something the brightest minds in the world couldn't solve. Who was she to think she could? But she took a breath, wiped her hands, and logged into the official challenge website. The cursor blinked on the screen, waiting for her to type. She entered one word, heart. Then she clicked submit. The page froze for a few seconds, then displayed a message. "Your answer has been received. Verification in progress." She stared at it, heart pounding. For a moment, she laughed quietly to herself. "I can't believe I actually did it." Her laughter faded when her phone buzzed. An email popped up. "Moritech, urgent confirmation request." Her hands shook as she opened it. "Dear Ms. Cole, your submission has triggered a positive response from our system. Please confirm your identity and location for live verification." She just sat there, frozen, her reflection staring back at her from the dark laptop screen. But across the ocean, in a skyscraper lit up against the Tokyo skyline, Kenji Morimoto had just been alerted. And for the first time in years, he didn't know what to think. Tokyo, 2 days later. Kenji Morimoto sat in his private office on the 56th floor, surrounded by walls of glass and steel that reflected the city lights below. The air was tense. His assistant, Naoko, stood near the door clutching a tablet, her eyes flicking nervously between him and the screen. "Are you saying," Kenji asked slowly, "that the person who solved it is a maid?" Naoko swallowed. "Yes, sir. From Tulsa, Oklahoma. Her name is Marissa Cole." He leaned back in his chair, half smiling, half incredulous. "That's impossible." The system verified the answer twice. No one else even came close. Her solution triggered the AI's recognition sequence. Kenji turned toward the massive window. "Heart," he murmured. "She wrote heart." The word lingered in the air like an echo. For the first time, his arrogance gave way to silence. Not anger, not disbelief, but something deeper. Confusion. "Prepare a live conference," he said finally. "I want to meet her. Publicly." Back in Oklahoma, Marissa's life had turned upside down overnight. Reporters had found her within hours. News vans parked outside her apartment. Strangers shouted her name when she stepped outside to get the mail. Tasha stood guard near the door, swatting away journalists with her broom. "Girl, you'd better say something soon before they start digging through your trash," she said. Marissa sat at her table, hands clasped. "I didn't mean for any of this. I just wanted to see if I could do it." Her phone rang again. A Japanese number this time. The voice on the other end was calm, formal. "Miss Cole, this is Moritech Robotics. Mr. Morimoto would like to speak with you. Liv. Are you available in 1 hour?" She hesitated. I guess so." An hour later, her laptop screen filled with the image of a broadcast studio in Tokyo. Kenji Morimoto sat at a sleek black desk, perfectly composed, but his expression was unreadable. "Miss Cole," he said through the translator, "you have done what no one else in the world could do. You solved my riddle." Marissa took a shaky breath. "I didn't mean to make a scene. I just followed what made sense." Kenji tilted his head slightly. "And what made sense to you?" She hesitated, then said softly, "The puzzle wasn't about intelligence. It was about understanding. Machines can calculate, but they don't feel. The answer was heart, because that's what connects reason and compassion. You built an AI to think like a human, but you forgot the one thing that makes us human." The room went quiet. Even the translator paused before repeating her words in Japanese. Kenji's eyes dropped to the table. For once, he didn't have a clever response. He simply nodded. "You're right." Then almost reluctantly, he smiled. The first genuine smile he'd shown in years. "Congratulations, Miss Cole. You've not only won the challenge, you've reminded me why I created it in the first place." Her voice trembled. "I wasn't trying to prove anything." He nodded again. "That's exactly why you did." Within hours, the internet exploded. Clips of their exchange spread everywhere, headlines reading, "Black Maid outsmarts Japanese billionaire," and "The human who beat the machine." But for Marissa, the noise didn't matter. What mattered was the quiet that followed. A quiet filled with peace. But sometimes, the loudest stories are the ones that begin after the cameras turn off. For weeks after the broadcast, Marissa's name was everywhere. TV anchors debated her unlikely genius, talk shows invited her to speak, and companies she'd once cleaned for suddenly called her Ms. Cole instead of the Maid. She turned down most interviews. Fame wasn't what she wanted. Peace was. Kenji Morimoto, on the other hand, kept his word. The $500 million prize was wired to her account, though Marissa didn't believe it until the bank called to verify. When she finally saw the balance, she just sat there staring, whispering, "That can't be real." Tasha screamed loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Girl, you better not be joking." Marissa laughed, tears in her eyes. "I'm not, but I still feel like me." "Yeah," Tasha said, grinning. "Just richer." A few days later, Marissa received an envelope in the mail. No return address, just her name written in precise, careful handwriting. Inside was a letter and a small wooden pendant shaped like a heart. "Miss Cole, the greatest puzzles are not meant to be solved, but understood. You reminded me that humanity isn't measured by logic or wealth, but by compassion. Never forget what made you see what others couldn't. Kenji Morimoto. She held the pendant for a long time, smiling quietly. Marissa didn't move to a mansion or buy designer clothes. She bought her father a new home, paid off her debts, and started a small community learning center in Tulsa, a place where kids and adults could come learn math, science, coding, or just talk. She named it the Heart Lab. Reporters came once in a while, curious to see what the maid who beat a billionaire was doing with her fortune. She always gave the same answer. "I didn't beat anyone," she'd say. "I just remembered who I was." Sometimes she'd see a student struggling with a problem and tell them, "Don't think about the answer. Think about the meaning." Because deep down, she knew that's what changed her life. Not the puzzle, but what it revealed about herself. The world can make you feel small. It can convince you that you're ordinary. But every now and then, something reminds you that brilliance doesn't belong to titles, money, or degrees. It belongs to those who care enough to see what others ignore. So, if you ever doubt yourself, remember Marissa. Remember that a woman with tired hands and an old calculator once proved the smartest man in Japan wrong. Not with numbers, but with heart. Because sometimes, the greatest intelligence is kindness. If this story moved you, share it with someone who's forgotten their own potential. Remind them that no dream is too far gone and no life too ordinary to shine. Because the next time the world says impossible, maybe it's your turn to prove them wrong.